All right, so we're going to talk about Salt Creek, another old fiddle tune. This is one that I remember hearing again from Doc Watson for the first time, and then later through Tony Rice. It's one that's kind of traditionally played out of A. Later on in the course, we're going to talk about playing it without the capo, but for this instant, and for the majority of the time, if I'm playing this song in a jam with a band, whatever, I'm going to use my capo on the 2nd fret and play out of G position. So this song, a little melody breakdown. It starts with that banjo roll that we were talking about earlier. So chord-wise, starts on the G or A, goes to that C position, F to the D, back to G, C, back to G, D, G. So that first part would be, rhythmically would go. So you can hear the B part, it starts on that G position, goes to the F. It kind of stays on those two longer than the first part. And then so the second part, I'll play that whole section pretty slow. Really important parts of that, and that's a good exercise for really working your pinky. I used to practice that one out of just open G without using a capo, and really getting my pinky to stretch it a little further. But that's one of those licks that it's crucial to the song. It's a fiddle lick. And when I'm talking about, learning these other licks, it's a lot of that kind of stuff, all that double stop fiddle stuff that's so prevalent in this song, where you're just kind of sliding to, like you'd be going to that F shape of a G, but going 1 fret back and really using your right hand a little, not quite as tight, Thinking of playing this song the way a fiddle player would play the song is a good way to utilize your bluegrass vocabulary. So let's play Salt Creek. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's talk about Salt Creek and that performance of it. So the first part was basically what we talked about earlier, the melody of the song. With little bits and pieces of the Tony Rice vocabulary, little bits and pieces of the Doc Watson vocabulary. And then on the second part of it, when I'm kind of expanding on the melody a little bit, I started off playing an octave of it. When I think about that, like those lower octaves, I think a lot about Norman Blake and the way he would play that. Matter of fact, there's a version of Tony Rice and Norman Blake. And, you know, he would play a lot of those lower. So that's another little tip of the hat in this bluegrass vocabulary thing. Another part of that is that I utilize those fiddle. That lick. Is a Vassar Clements lick. So on the tail end of that, it's a little fiddle lick, kind of not a generic, but sort of a generic fiddle lick that a lot of fiddle players have used those into a very specific lick. Which I don't know where Vassar learned that from. The only slight thing I can think of is there's a guitar solo in a very famous kind of classic rock, or a early rock and roll song. So it's as far as I know, it's not a direct hint at that, but it is Vassar's this chromatic run. That when I hear that or when I play that, I immediately think of Vassar Clements, and so that's another sort of tip of my hat. There's dozens of them in just that one performance of Salt Creek, and it all goes back to just listening to this music for most of my life, or for playing along with these records, for learning these licks from other musicians, from other instrumentalists, from other instruments, just trying to incorporate what I can into my own playing. And in that way, it sort of makes it your own. If you're just incorporating all this stuff, you want to have big ears. You want to listen to as much music as you can listen to, and soak in as much music as you can to incorporate as much as you can into your musicality and your knowledge of the fretboard. And we'll talk about it later, but it's genreless. Basically, you can incorporate any style of music into this guitar. We all got the same 12 notes. Whether it's an electric guitar, whether it's a keyboard, whether it's whatever, we all have those same notes. So use them. And, when you're playing bluegrass music, when you're playing bluegrass guitar, utilize the notes or the note choices, those licks from people that came before you, as sort of a way of tipping your hat, but also as a way of sort of honoring the music. The bluegrass music's always sort of been, it's got one foot back in 1946 and 1 foot way out in the future. It's always pushing boundaries, but it's always kind of, looking back to what came before. And so at its very core, that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of that incorporated into Salt Creek.